Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Benji-Sales live chat. It's so good to be back. It's so good to see everybody. How are you doing today? I made a promise to you last week that I would be back this week, that I would not be taking these gaps, and we made it, baby. We are back for another week and another episode of the Benji-Sales live chat. Now, to be honest, there was a ton of news last week. This week, not as much, but we do have one major story that we can talk about. Not that there's been no news, right? There's been a few things, but there's one really big story, obviously, that broke yesterday. This was first reported by Jason Schreier from Bloomberg. He had said on Twitter that he heard from two sources that Jim Ryan was leaving PlayStation. This was very quickly reconfirmed by Sony themselves. They came out, they announced that Jim Ryan is indeed gone. And, well, not yet. He's going to be gone. He's retiring from Sony. He's retiring from PlayStation. And this is going to be effective in March of next year. So at the end of March next year, Jim Ryan is leaving PlayStation. So pretty giant news considering he's the leader over there. And anytime you're going to have, the leader of a division leave, you can expect some changes, right? I suspect whoever comes in to replace Jim Ryan isn't going to run things exactly like Jim Ryan. Now, that doesn't mean that the overall strategy won't be somewhat similar, but it'll be very interesting to see who replaces him, what their changes in strategy are going to be, and so much more. Now, the other thing that Sony announced is that they don't have an immediate replacement for Jim Ryan, which is pretty interesting. They are having someone transition into the role. Hiroki Totoki is going to temporarily replace Jim while they look for who's going to be the permanent replacement for his position. So that's also pretty interesting that they didn't already have someone lined up for that. I'm going to run some polls on that, on who you think might replace Jim, and it'll be really fun, right? So that's obviously the biggest thing we're going to talk about today. I'm sure there's probably going to be a whole lot of questions about what this means for the future of PlayStation, what your guys' opinions on this are, what's the legacy of Jim Ryan, and besides that, there's a few other stories. Jason Schreier again breaking another story today that Epic is laying off 16% of their employees, which is actually about 900 people, so a massive layoff there. Thoughts with everyone affected, and what does that mean, right? I mean, that's a sizable amount of people to lay off. So there might be some questions about that. Alan Wake 2 previews are out, and they're absolutely out of control glowing, and so much more. So if this is your first time ever as part of my live chat, the way it works, it's a stream, it's a show, it's 100% driven by you, your comments, your questions. You just drop them down into chat, and we talk about the latest news in the video game industry. There's going to be a few ways to do that. First of all, of course, there is the free method where you just type a question in chat, drops in, and I get to as many free questions as I possibly can per stream. If you want to guarantee that I get to your question or comment, there's going to be two different ways to do that. First of all, of course, there is the super chat method. Type a donation, whatever you want. It alerts me immediately, and I get to super chats as soon as they drop. The other way to guarantee that I get to at least one question or comment from you this stream is going to be by becoming a channel member. Channel membership's $4.99 a month, and channel members get priority in the chat. So I guarantee them all at least one question or comment getting highlighted, and oftentimes channel members get multiple per stream highlighted. As always, don't feel pressured or obligated to become a channel member or to donate in the super chat. Just a way to help support me in the channel and guarantee that I get to your comment or question. All right, guys, I think that's all we're going to need off the top. I think we're good to start rocking. I think we're good to start rolling. We don't have to talk about Jim Ryan. We can talk about anything you guys want. Just start filling that chat up with what you've got. All right, we got Joseki kicking us off in the stream saying, hello, Benji, channel member here. What's up? Massive layoffs at Epic Games and Sega Europe. The ones at Sega are especially worrying to me because they come with game cancellations too of the games as a service plus unannounced titles. I'm doubly worried about their super game initiative, investing all that money in a games as a service with dominant IPs is so risky in today's market. The competition is extremely fierce in the games as a service scene. Totally agree, Joseki. This has been my big warning call to the industry for a while. You guys know the terminology I use, the siren song of games as a service. you got to be so careful. The competition's so fierce on that, man. Competing with players for these games like Fortnite and Call of Duty and Apex Legends and Destiny and Overwatch. And I mean, there's just so many, right? I could keep going on and on and on. Even stuff like Roblox, technically. Like, there's so much of this sort of stuff out there that you're competing with players on. Good luck to you. Now, as I always say, that doesn't mean publishers shouldn't be pursuing any games as a service. It's smart to be pursuing some, because if you do have one that hits, you're going to make an absolute ton of money from it. But you know, I've been preaching this for like the last year and a half, 2 years. I've been preaching this loudly, that all these publishers need to be very, very, very careful about this. Let's just go all in on games as a service strategy, because it's a high risk business. I've been saying I think it's more risky than single player games right now, and that if you would have told the CEOs at these companies that 5 years ago, they would have laughed in my face. They would have said the future is all about multiplayer. No one cares about single player games. I'm not saying permanently this will be the case. I'm saying right now, today, I think trying to make a giant games as a service game is far riskier than making a narrative driven single player game. I just really do. So that doesn't mean single-player games have no risk, right? We see those fail all the time, too. Look at Immortals of Avium, right? That's a game that just heavily missed expectations, and that had a single-player focus. So I'm not trying to say, oh, it's only games as a service with the risk, but it is risky, man. It's risky. Trying to pull people off of all these giant multiplayer games they're already invested in is so hard. So I feel really bad for the people that are getting laid off. I know one of the games that was canceled was going to be a games as a service game called Hyenas, I think. That got canceled, layoffs. I mean, it's a bit of a worrying time for the industry in general right now, if I'm being honest with you. We have these Epic layoffs. We've got Sega doing layoffs. We have the studio behind Immortals of Avium. I think it's Ascendant Studios. They laid off like half their staff. You know, as good as this year has been for game releases, in terms of like health of the industry, a little more questionable, man. Lots of games getting canceled, lots of layoffs. We're even seeing studio closures, right? Look at what happened with Volition. It's a little bit of a worrying time, if I'm going to be honest with you. A little bit worrying. Hopefully, you know, some of these big games that are releasing are going to start driving revenue back into these companies, and we see things kind of, you know, boost back up. But it is a bit worrying right now, just like, yeah, I agree. And for Sega, you know, they need to just keep doubling down, in my opinion, on what they're already so successful at, right? Sonic, the last Sonic game was hugely successful for them. The 3D one, Frontiers, I think it was called, massively successful for Sega. Obviously, they need to make a sequel follow-up to that. Keep doing what they're doing that they're very good at. Now, again, I don't want a company to get stale, so I'm not telling Sega, hey, only make, you know, Sonic games and the other things you make. I'm not saying that, but really I would double down on those things that are finding success, and then do a couple experimental things here and there, right, sprinkled in on top of it. And thanks for being a channel member, Joseki. Let's see. We got another channel member here, MD, with always the super nice comments as always. MD always with the most hype support, saying, Benji, your affirmation worked. I know it did, buddy. I will stream next week, and you did. Congrats. Hope you're feeling better. MD, I am. I feel so much better on this stream than I did last week. And you're right. That affirmation, that positive self-talk absolutely helped. You know, there was a split second this morning where I was questioning it. I was like, man, I'm tired. I'm like, do I want to jump on the stream? Even though I love doing these streams, you know, just everything right now is a struggle for me. And I was like, no, I said I'm doing it last week. I'm freaking back. Let's go. And I'm feeling much better this week than I did last week. So thank you, MD, for the support as always, man. The support of people like you, MD, is part of what's helped keep me going through all of this stuff. All right, that's it for channel members. We got no super chats, so let's start diving into your free questions. Looks like this might be a day I can hit a lot of free questions, to be honest with you, with the way the stream's starting off. So that's going to be good, because a lot of times I can't. All right, Exiza here. Hey, Benji, how was your week? This has been a pretty good week. Like I said, I'm definitely feeling better than I have some weeks. How are you doing, Exiza? I hope you're doing good. So many great games came out lately, Lies of P, Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty, etc. Now after Starfield, you should start Cyberpunk 2077. You know, Exiza, I was just debating that. I've never played Cyberpunk, which is crazy because I've owned the game since the day it came out. Literally, the day that Cyberpunk came out, I had bought the game, still never played it because the game was in such a bad state at launch, and then there was a on console because that's where I'm going to play it. And then there's been like a bunch of other times throughout the years that it's been out that I've like almost jumped back into it, but I've always been like, oh, I'll wait for one more patch. I'll wait for one more patch. And then once they announced Phantom Liberty, I was like, well, now I might as well wait for the expansion. I think now is the time, Exiza. I actually agree with you. I think I'm going to dive into it. I can get hopefully through it before we hit like, you know, Alan Wake 2 and Spider-Man 2 and, you know, all these games coming later on in October. There's going to be a few big ones early on too, like Assassin's Creed Mirage. But I can kind of wait, I think, a little bit on Mirage if I'm playing Cyberpunk. I just want to make sure I'm done with Cyberpunk by the time Spider-Man and Alan Wake get here. So I do agree, Exiza. I think now is the perfect time. So I literally was just thinking that today. Dangerman1337, as Joseki said, Hyena being canceled is a big oof. Yes, Creative Assembly better get more people to fix up WH3, considering the state of that game, which is in a rough spot. Not sure what Creative Assembly's upper management were thinking about a hero shooter that'd be coming out in 2023 or so would be received. Yeah, it's worrying. You know, it's worrying for the industry in general right now. They isn't Creative Assembly the one who is rumored to be making that Halo thing, right? Aren't they the ones? Let me double check this. Right? Aren't they the ones that are rumored, or am I getting things mixed up? You guys tell me. Maybe I'm tripping. I thought that Creative Assembly are the ones who are rumored to be working on that, but I might be getting a studio mixed up if I'm being honest. Oh, Certain Affinity, that's the one. Certain Affinity. Their names are so similar because it's CA. I've done that. Thank you, Infinity Doc. I've done that multiple times. There's been multiple times that I've gotten Creative Assembly and Certain Affinity mixed up because their names are so similar. I know like the actual words aren't, but there's not many studios where it's CA as the two ones. I've done that so many times. So yeah, they're not in a good spot, man. That is worrying, and I know that they've had layoffs because of Hyenas getting canceled. So yeah, Danger Man, I agree. Rough spot for the studio. Hopefully they can bounce back soon. Forzathon is back. Hi, Benji. I don't even know if you remember me at this point. I do. As soon as I saw that name, I recognized you instantly, Forzathon. I absolutely remember you. Great to see you. It's been a while. It's been way too long. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing super good, Forzathon. Well, you know, super good, all things considered. Compared to my low points this year, I'm doing pretty darn good, and it's great to see you, Forzathon. It's been a while. Timmer7229, hi Benji, hope you're doing well. No question today. I'm doing much better, Timmer. Great to see you, buddy, as always in the chat. I mean, I don't know if you've ever even missed a chat, Timmer. Great to see you, man. Blazing Flame, with Jim's retirement, I'm afraid that PlayStation could shift their planned strategy again. Jim maybe has some missteps, but he also did a lot of good for PlayStation. I want his strategy in acquiring more studios, expanding first-party studios, making single-player exclusives to continue. Do you think PlayStation will continue to have strong first-party and second-party single-player titles as their bread and butter? Do you see them continue to expand their studios/teams and acquiring more studios regardless of who's the CEO? What y'all think? So here's the thing. I don't think Sony's going to move away at all from their big single-player games. In fact, I would say that Jim might have been more focused on games as a service than whoever's going to replace him. Now, we'll have to see, but Jim really seemed to be the one that was really pushing the games as a service initiative. And Sony's not going to back off from that. They've already got a ton of them in development. I mean, they straight up bought Bungie, who, like, that's all Bungie makes nowadays is games as a service. So whenever I say whoever's going to replace Jim might even be more single-player friendly than Jim was, that's not me saying all the games as a service games are canceled, and all of you guys that only love single player games that have been super mad about Jim for diving all in on games as a service, you're all going to be cheering for joy because it's going to be back to the PS4 days where Sony makes basically no multiplayer. I'm not telling you that. But I'm saying, because, you know, they've already got a ton of in development. They've already got a ton of resources poured into it. But there's no doubt Sony's continuing to see the huge success that their single-player games make, right? God of War Ragnarok, absolutely massively successful for them financially. Spider-Man 2, about to be massively successful for them financially. Horizon Forbidden West, I'm sure, we haven't gotten tons of numbers out of Horizon, but I'm sure it was a big success financially for them. Like, there's just no way. Sony knows, like, they've got the data. They know what games have been really driving their first-party successes, and they know it has been this big, narrative-focused, giant budget game. So there's no way Blazing Flame they're just going to abandon that. They're still going to be making those games for as long as PlayStation exists, in my opinion. They are going to, however, be making games as a service games. I will say that I'm not worried at all about whoever replaces Jim suddenly being like, single player's dead and we're only making multiplayer. Can't see that at all. I can't see that at all. So I wouldn't be too worried about that Blazing Flame. Now, the one area that I would say maybe is questionable that you're raising here is, are Sony going to continue, whoever replaces Jim, are they going to continue with the strategy of acquiring studios? Because under Jim's rule, they acquired quite a few studios, right? They bought a lot under Jim, and we don't exactly know what Sony's plans are going to be moving forward and what, you know, the next PlayStation boss's plans are going to be around acquisitions. Are they still going to be aggressive about it? Are they going to back off for a while and just focus on what they have? That is a big unknown, Blazing Flame. Big unknown. Sony had sent signals over the last year. Now, they really slowed down on acquisitions lately, post-Bungie, but they've still sent signals for a while that they're still looking at some acquisitions for PlayStation. But, you know, have they pulled back from that? Is the next person going to not want to do that as much? You know, that's more questionable to me than if they're going to just totally back off of single-player games. So don't sweat it about the single-player stuff. The acquisition strategy, though, who knows? Who knows how it's going to play out? Yoda Soda here saying, yo, what's up, Yoda Soda? Great to see you. Hi, Benji. Hope you're well. What do you think the most likely scenario for Herman Hulse? Staying as PlayStation head, promoted to CEO of PlayStation, or being replaced by a new head when new CEO comes? So this is actually a perfect opportunity to run my first poll, guys. So get ready to do some voting because this is a great time to do it. So who will replace Jim Ryan? I'm going to give you a couple options. First one, Herman Hulse. I'm not entirely sure I spelled that right, but hopefully. Let me see. How did you spell it? Did you spell it the same way I did? H-E-R-M-A-N? Oh, okay. I thought it was H-E-R-M-E-N. So I'll change it to A-N. There we go. Herman Hulse. Is he going to replace Jim? Someone else in Sony? So just some other Sony employee that's not Herman Hulse, you know, an unknown, or outside hire. Now, something that's interesting, and getting to your question, I'll drop that now into the chat, that poll. Okay, to answer your question, the most obvious answer seems to be Herman. However, the fact that they're doing this transitionary CEO and then like with no clear leadership change announcement makes me think it's probably not Herman. I think if they thought for sure today that it's going to be Herman Hulse, they would have just announced that alongside of it. They would have said, hey, when Jim Ryan leaves, Herman will, you know, replace him. Now, that doesn't mean that Herman can't. But I do believe with the way announced it means that it's not a lock. Like Sony isn't just dead set, it's going to be Herman. So it could be an outside hire, which is interesting because I'm not sure, or it could be someone else within Sony, right? Or it even could be Herman. Like it's a complete unknown right now. But I would say if they do outside hire, just like I wonder who the heck that would be. I mean, the leader of PlayStation. If you do an outside hire, I would not hire someone not within gaming, right? You don't want to take, you see companies all the time that will just hire someone for a CEO position in an industry that they've never even done before. I don't think that really works for gaming because gaming is such a creative art and not just a business, right? At the end of the day, I say it all the time, at the end of the day, it is a business. Things do need to be profitable, but this isn't just like manufacturing a product like toilet paper, right? Or any other just like random daily use object or food. Like, it is a, not that being a chef can't be creative, but I'm saying it's a very creative industry as well. And I think you have to understand that side of the business as well if you're going to be a CEO of a gaming company. So if they do an outside hire, I would caution Sony, you better hire someone else that's involved in gaming. And who that would be, I don't know. So that's what makes it tough. Herman seemed the obvious answer, but the fact he wasn't, as part of this announcement, just like teed up, again, I don't think it means that he can't get the position. I just think it means Sony's not 100% convinced he's definitely the guy for the job. So hard to say, very hard to say. I'm not 100% sure how that's going to shake out. I'm curious to see what you guys think, so I'm going to let that poll run for a little bit. Cookie Cutter, sorry if I got asked before, but I'm curious, Benji. When do you think developers and publishers will slow down or stop chasing live service games? Don't you think they should just make normal multiplayer instead? Well, I think you're seeing Ubisoft already sort of learn that lesson. Now, Ubisoft hasn't abandoned making games as a service, free-to-play multiplayer games, but what have you noticed, guys? Ubisoft, what was I telling you guys for the last, it's probably 2 years ago now that I was on that earnings call with Ubisoft and with Yves, and I heard him start announcing their giant free-to-play push. And all of a sudden, my eyebrow raised. I was like, you what? Because it wasn't one of those things where I was on the call and Yves was just like, yeah, we're going to, make a couple of these free-to-play. We're going to still focus on what we do best, but we're going to start experimenting and expanding. It wasn't like that at all. I'm on this call, and all of a sudden Yves is like, we're all in on free-to-play. Not in those exact words, but essentially he was like, we're all in on free-to-play and games as a service. And what did you see result from that announcement? Well, you saw a massive reduction of games released from Ubisoft. They used to be a publisher that was just guaranteed to be releasing multiple giant AAA games per year, every year. And then all of a sudden they completely crashed in terms of their software output, because now all of a sudden they're doing games that they have no experience, to be honest, in making. That's going to be, anytime you're just like, hey, we're completely shifting how we develop games, and you have no history of it, that's not like one studio. It's like all of Ubisoft all of a sudden decided we're going to make 15 free-to-play games. So you saw a massive deacceleration in software output from Ubisoft. You saw these few projects they've released so far that are games as a service essentially find no success. Still, their only giant games as a service success is Rainbow Six Siege, which they released forever ago. Tons of these free-to-play games have been in development forever, and they're not even out. Division Heartland, X-Defiant, etc., etc. And now all of a sudden you're seeing Ubisoft be like, oh, we've got 15 Assassin's Creed games in development, everyone. Look at us. All of a sudden you've got, big single-player Star Wars game. You got big single-player Avatar game. You got, hey, we're going to make Division 3, which I know is a games as a service, but it's at least one that they've released 2 iterations of before that were successful. So you're seeing all of a sudden Ubisoft, and we got Far Cry 7 on the way, pivot back to what made them successful in the first place. That doesn't mean Ubisoft's going to stop this free-to-play push. Doesn't mean that maybe X-Defiant's a giant hit when it comes out. Maybe Division Heartland's a giant hit. Who knows? But I think you're seeing Ubisoft already learn the lesson. They had to take the punch on the jaw first because they were really probably the first of the Western publishers that just decided we're going all freaking in. They took the first hit, and I've been saying for a while, every single publisher should look at Ubisoft and not repeat their mistake. As always, you should be trying to make a couple games as a service games. You should, because if in the off chance you get the next Apex Legends, and the off chance you get the next Fortnite, and the off chance you get the next Destiny, amazing. You're about to make so much freaking money. But if you're making 10 of them and 8 of them burn out, yeah, sure, you got 2 of them, but how much money did you waste with those other 8? It's not free development, right? It's not just free having thousands of people working on all of these games and them all, not all, but let's just be realistic. A lot of these are going to crash and burn. That should have been the canary in the coal mine for every other publisher in this industry, in my opinion. Make some games as a service, experiment with games as a service. You should not be pouring all of your resources into it because it's just not going to work out for you. That's just the truth. Let me see. I think there was a super chat. There was. All right, Highlander coming in with the super chat, dropping the 10. Thank you so much, Highlander. CEO Satya Nadella and Mark Zuckerberg confirmed that the Xbox Game Pass library is coming to the Meta Quest. Yeah, pretty cool announcement. Does it mean that it may work with Series XS? Will this mean Xbox games? Okay, I think you're asking, does it mean that you're going to be able to get the Meta Quest to work on an Xbox? It does seem that Microsoft's strategy for VR is going to be to partner with Meta. I always want to say Facebook. I know they're Meta now. To partner with Meta, right? That seems clearly to be their strategy. The fact that they're putting cloud on here, the whole Game Pass library, essentially. I mean, that's a big move. Phil has signaled in the past that Microsoft has no intention of making their own VR hardware because the market for him is just not there for it. I think we're seeing that play out with PSVR 2. There's indications that it has just completely stalled out on sales. And you're not seeing a ton of software support for it from within Sony, for example, or big major publishers. So it seems that Microsoft and Xbox's strategy around VR is, hey, who is actually successful in the space right now? And to be honest, the most successful VR product on the market is the Quest. People always are going to point to the giant, what's the word I'm looking for? The giant losses that the VR division posts. A huge part of that, however, in my opinion, is how much money they're wasting on metaverse stuff. The Quest hardware itself is the most successful VR product on the market. Quest 3 is probably going to do extremely well. So it makes complete sense to me why they're partnering with Meta on all of this. The one thing I will say, does it mean that you're going to get native Meta Quest support on an Xbox? I would say for now, no. I don't know if Meta has any intention of ever allowing that. For people that are like, well, Quest is self-powered, how would that work out? Well, you can connect a Quest to a PC, and you can have actually the PC hardware running the game, and then just the Quest itself, you know, being the display essentially for the hardware. So you technically, as long as they allowed it, could probably do the same thing with an Xbox. Just connect it via the high-speed USB-C cable, have the Xbox hardware running the VR game, and, you know, the Quest connected to it. Theoretically, could you do that? Sure. I don't think there's anything that completely negates that from being a possibility. Will Xbox and Meta partner in that sort of way where you see that sort of thing? For now, I'm going to say no, Highlander. I don't think it's an impossibility eventually. I just don't know if Microsoft or Meta thinks that there's going to be the software purchasing power on Xbox Store to justify all of the investment that would have to go into that. So for now, Highlander, I'll say you probably aren't going to see Meta being able to natively work on an Xbox, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. You never know. Something like that, maybe down the road, they could work out a deal like that. But I wouldn't expect it soon. Hey, if they announce it, sweet. That'd be great. I'm buying a Quest 3 day one. I bought a Quest 1, bought a Quest 2. Love them both. I used Quest all the time, especially for fitness stuff. Beat Saber, Thrill of the Fight Boxing, which is a great workout. I use my Quest all the time. So I'd love it, but we'll have to see. Big news, though, that they're putting the whole xCloud Game Pass library on there. I mean, that's sweet. That's a pretty smart idea. Jeremy G. Phil Harris. Jeremy G with a 2 super chat and a fantastic comment. Phil Harrison will find a way to get the job. Well, right now, every single PlayStation fan should be hoping and praying that Phil Harrison doesn't step anywhere near PlayStation. For anyone that, you know, I'm sure everyone here knows about it because we're all hardcores. But if you've somehow missed it, let's just say Phil Harrison has arguably the worst track record in all of gaming for successes. And I always feel bad when I say this because I've never heard Phil Harrison's not a nice guy, right? That's sometimes you hear rumblings like Bobby Kotick, even before all of the the allegations and stuff came out around that. I mean, I had heard, and I'm sure many people had heard, horror stories about Bobby for years, right? I've been hearing about the way Bobby acts for a long time. So there's some people like you hear those rumblings. I've never heard Phil Harrison's a bad guy. For all I know, Phil Harrison's probably like the nicest dude in the world, but he does not have a good track record for success. I know that's a joke, Jeremy, and it is hilarious. You made me laugh. But every PlayStation fan better be like, for the love of God, do not allow Phil Harrison anywhere near this position. Hilarious. Okay. All right. Super chats are cleared. I think there was a couple more channel members that are popping questions into the chat. We got Ladays. What is up, Ladays? Hey, Benji, is Mortal Kombat 1 underperforming? You know what? Sort of, right? Am I the only one seeing this? I don't know. Let's talk about it. Its peak on Steam was less than half of Street Fighter 6, and it's number 12 on the Xbox charts. Seems unfortunate if it's the case because I quite liked the game. Yeah, this is a bit of a surprise to me because Ladays, I've seen so little buzz about Mortal Kombat 1. This is a shocker to me. Let's see how much, if WB and NetherRealm announce some sort of sales milestone, that would be great. That would be amazing. I'd love to hear it. But from an outsider perspective, just looking at the things that I can look at, right? The Steam charts, that, like you said, the Xbox Most Played charts, the general social media buzz, Mortal Kombat 1 from those sort of things. And again, all of this is sort of nebulous, right? And you don't have all of the data. But from the things I can see, I would say yes. Mortal Kombat 1 is underperforming compared to what I expected. You saw Mortal Kombat X be an absolute juggernaut. You saw Mortal Kombat 11 be an absolute juggernaut. Like the early trailer views and stuff for MK1 were looking fantastic. And then it came out and it just isn't driving the sort of numbers or conversation that I expected at all. By no means is Mortal Kombat 1 a bomb. This is not me sitting here saying Mortal Kombat 1's bombing. It's like, oh, wow, everyone needs to be worried. No, I'm guarantee you this thing's still selling millions right now. But is it doing what I expected? Not at all. Not at all. So that's very interesting. I wonder if it's a case of going back to that Mortal Kombat well too many times too quickly. I think there was a lot of people after 11, because 11 wasn't that long ago. And it was like already such a content complete package. Like it already had so many fighters. It was already so great looking. Like it was already such a good game. I wonder if they should have done Injustice 3 before Mortal Kombat 1. Let's be real. An Injustice game is not going to sell necessarily at the sort of level that a Mortal Kombat is. But maybe if they would have got an Injustice 3 in there first, obviously it would sell well. And then that would drive more anticipation for the next Mortal Kombat because even more time would be between it, more people to get excited about the next entry. We'll have to see, Ladays. Maybe all of a sudden WB comes out and they announce it's the fastest selling Mortal Kombat game ever, and all of this is moot, not accurate. But it does feel like it, right? It does. It does feel like Mortal Kombat 1's not doing what and I think a lot of people were kind of expecting. But let's see. Because I hear it's a great game. I haven't played it yet, but, that's what I'm hearing. Highlander, channel member. I think Sony will hire Larry Herb. That's a joke. That is funny. That is funny. You guys got jokes. Benji with the channel member question. What's up, Benji? Oh, and I think I saw Split End in the chat. Yo, Split End 89, helping mod the channel. Excellent friend of mine. Check out his Alan Wake 2 preview. It's excellent. He posted it up on Gaming Trend. I know there's a video version of it as well. Split End 89 got to get hands-on with Alan Wake 2. Split End in this chat, he has played Alan Wake 2 already. And he's got a big preview up of it up on Gaming Trend. So if you're interested in that game, check out Split End's work over there. Great to see you, buddy. And then Benji, channel member, saying, hi, Benji, do you think Jim Ryan's departure could be as well linked to midterm and long-term orientations that are not in line with other people internally and investors? It's a great question, Benji, because the way this was announced was that Jim Ryan is retiring from PlayStation. Anyone that follows business knows that could absolutely be true. That is just he's decided to retire himself. If you follow business, though, and oftentimes, people in very high leadership positions will be given an option. You will be told, hey, we're going to let you go, but hey, you could announce it as a retirement. You could announce it as you're choosing to depart the company. This sort of thing is done as a service to these sort of people. Now, I'm not telling you this would happen with Jim Ryan. Jim Ryan might legitimately be wanting to retire. I know he made a statement about travel from Europe, to the US and all of this sort of stuff. By no means am I sitting here telling you that Jim Ryan was straight up fired and it's game over, and he's just announcing his firing essentially as a retirement. However, could that be possible? Sure, it could be possible. It happens all of the time. Literally all of the time. That happens in companies with very high level, high paying positions. You're told a little bit of the thing behind the scenes, and then you're announced it as, hey guys, I'm retiring from this company. I'm doing blah, 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 blah. So there's no way for us to know. We'll probably never know. I mean, we still don't even know why Shawn Laden left PlayStation, right? All indications are that Shawn Laden leaving PlayStation was not done willingly. I don't think Shawn chose to leave PlayStation. However, think about it. We've still never heard why Shawn Laden left. So if this was a scenario where Jim didn't willingly retire, if he was just told he was being letting go and it's announced as a retirement, we'll probably never know. Like, that's probably a thing we'll just never hear. So we just won't know, Benji. It's one of those things. Could it be that? Sure. Could it be Jim really wants to retire? Sure. No way to know. It's a super interesting question. I've wondered it myself. But again, considering we never even heard why Shawn Laden left, I doubt we'll ever hear, if, and this is just saying if it wasn't him choosing to retire, we'll probably never hear it. All right. I think super chats and channel member questions are cleared. So back to the freebies. X, I didn't really agree with where Jim was taking PlayStation, but I'm nervous about who will replace him. I get that. The one thing you could say for Jim Ryan, because I know a lot of people in the PlayStation community actually weren't that big of fans of Jim Ryan. Like, PlayStation fans' relationship with Jim Ryan was very different, I would say, than like Xbox's fans' relationship with Phil Spencer. Like, the vast majority of Xbox fans seem to be fully behind Phil Spencer. Obviously, you're going to get some Xbox fans that don't like what he's doing, but your general Xbox fan seems to be a big fan of Phil. I never got that vibe from PlayStation fans. Of course, there's some that like Jim, but there was also a lot of, I would say, head-to-head hitting between the fan base and Jim Ryan. But the one thing you can say is that Jim was at PlayStation for a very long time. So for sure he understood PlayStation, right? So if this does end up being like an outside hire, I totally get it, X. I get being nervous. I get it. If it's Herman at the end of the day, I wouldn't be nervous at all. I think Herman's great. If it's someone else from within Sony that has, a good relationship with PlayStation, I wouldn't be too nervous. The most worrying thing for me would be an outside hire. That would be, but we'll see. Ghost Tunnels. Benji, why do you think PlayStation is leaving consumers/players in the dark when it comes to first-party titles? I was just having this conversation on my Discord yesterday. When do you think they will start showing more first-party titles, summer to fall of 2024? They absolutely need to, very soon. So, because if we're going to be honest right now, Sony's essentially being carried by third party. Look at this. I was just having this this conversation yesterday. I think right now is the least excited I've been about PlayStation first party. Notice what I'm saying here, not exclusives. PlayStation first party. I think this is the least excited I've been for their output since the PlayStation 3 days, right? It's been that long since I've personally felt, the least interested in what they have coming up. And now that's not because, I think that PlayStation has like 15 announced games that look like trash. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying because they got like basically nothing freaking announced. Like basically nothing. Let's go through these really quick. Team Asobi, no announced game. Maybe some of this stuff we kind of think or know what might be coming, but I'm talking about flat out on the calendar. You've seen it. Asobi, not a single game announced. Bend, not a single game announced. Bluepoint, not a single game announced. Fire Sprite, not a single game announced. Gorilla, not a single game announced. Haven finally did. Housemarque, not a single game announced. Like Media Molecule, not a single game announced. Naughty Dog, the only thing they have announced, a multiplayer game that we're not sure if it's actually ever coming out. Like, it just keeps going. Santa Monica, not a single game announced. Sucker Punch, not a single game announced. Like, they have nothing announced. It's pretty wild. Now, I am sure that a ton of these studios are making absolutely awesome games. And I'm sure once these games are actually announced, I'm going to be incredibly hyped and excited for PlayStation's current lineup. But if you're just looking at just their first party, right? We're not talking about exclusives because they actually have a lot of big third-party exclusives on the way, right? They've got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which I'm out of my mind excited for. They got Rise of the Ronin. They've got Death Stranding 2, which is a little bit of a weird scenario where it definitely feels like a first-party game. It's on a first-party engine, but Kojima Productions is a third-party company. In fact, they're making an Xbox exclusive as well. So you have like and Stellar Blade. I'm excited for it, but again, it's a third-party exclusive. I have not seen a scenario like this where there's so little from first-party announced for Sony in so long. Like, I felt like that entire PlayStation 4 generation, part of what made the excitement for the PlayStation brand so strong is you just felt like there was always these big games coming you were excited for that were announced. You always knew that there was new, Infamous games coming and Last of Us games coming and Uncharted games coming and God of War's coming and Ghost of Tsushima's coming. Like, there's just like Spider-Man's coming and then Miles Morales at the end of the generation. Like, it felt like there was always just like all these big announced games. And even early PS5 cycle was that way, right? It was pretty early on. You got like Horizon Forbidden West announcements and Gran Turismo announcements and God of War Ragnarok announcements. Like, it's really been this last like year and a half-ish where all of a sudden it's felt like first party wise in terms of like excitement for what's next has just utterly stalled. I've said a lot of time, Ghost Tunnels. The reason I believe this is happening is strictly because none of these games have been in a state ready to be shown. So when they'll finally have like that pipeline ready where they can be like, okay, we can finally start showing what like 90% of our studios are making, because I haven't done the math. It's got to be like 80% of their studios don't have an announced game right now. Even if some of them we theoretically know, right? Like, we know Ben's making a new IP, but what does that mean? We know that Sucker Punch is more than likely making the sequel to Ghost of Tsushima, but that's not official. We haven't seen it. We know that Santa Monica is making some sort of new IP, but again, just never seen it. Like, there's a lot of stuff where we kind of think we know what's coming, but it's hard to get really excited for it until you see it. So when are they going to finally start showing this stuff? My answer, Ghost Tunnels, has been the same it's been for so long when people were asking me all year, where's a PlayStation showcase at? It's going to be when these games are finally in a state that they're presentable. And I guess we're just still not there yet. Hopefully soon, though, Ghost Tunnels. Hopefully soon. I would hope that they're ready to start showing some big stuff by next summer. I really hope we don't have to wait all the way until like a September showcase or something like that, because that's going to be rough. So hopefully by summer they're going to be prepared to like really start showing you what all these studios are doing. Make sure there was no super chats or channel member stuff dropped. All right, yeah, doesn't look like it. Donovan Martin. Wonder what this could mean. Let's look at the results of this poll, by the way, that we've been running. I asked you who will replace Jim Ryan. Right now, 58% of you, the leader of the poll, believes someone else in Sony. 23% of you, second place on the poll, say Herman Hulst. And 19% of you say outside hire. Yeah, it's hard to say. If I had to bet money on it, I'd say that actually the people that have the most vote are probably right. Someone else within Sony. Who that would be, I have no clue. I just don't know. But I think you guys are probably right. Outside hire to me is just so risky. And I think if Herman was guaranteed to the position, like they knew it was him, they would have announced it. So I feel like maybe it's going to come down to Herman Hulst or someone else in Sony. Maybe they're eyeing Herman, but they're just not positive about that. And they want to look at some other candidates too before they make any sort of announcement. So maybe Herman Hulst is going to be like competing for that job. You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting. Very, 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 very interesting. Okay. Donovan Martin, wonder what this could mean for future PC ports since Jim was the proponent of them all this time. And also, what is that letter that Destin retweeting talking about? Destroying inventory of PlayStation statues. What is going on with this company right now? I actually did not see. So that second question, what Destin's retweeting, I actually have no idea. I haven't seen it. I'm just not sure. So that one, like the thing about statues, I'm not sure what that means. PC ports, I think PlayStation's not going to pull back on PC at all. There's just too much money to be made on PC for PlayStation and Xbox. I've said for a long time I'm not expecting Nintendo to join on the PC bandwagon anytime soon. Will they eventually at some point in time? Probably, but you know, Nintendo's just all about their own hardware and their own closed ecosystem. Sony is definitely like the in-between, right? You've got Nintendo, who's like hardcore, locked down on our hardware. We are still a traditional hardware selling company, and our games selling on our own hardware, and that's it. Like, you got Nintendo on one end of the spectrum. Then you got like Xbox all the way on the other end of the spectrum, where Xbox is basically just like, let's try and put our games like literally everywhere. We still have a console. We're still going to make a console. We're still going to support a console, but we're trying to make our games be played basically anywhere someone can play them. And then you've got Sony that's like in between the two. Sony's still like very, very in on PlayStation hardware. That's still definitely their focus, but they're like a little bit more, you know, not Nintendo, a little closer to Xbox side, where they're experimenting with releasing out on PC. You know, they're doing some more of this sort of stuff. So, you know, I don't expect them to pull back on PC. I'll say that. I think they're probably going to keep the strategy they have right now, where it's like multiplayer games, probably like games as a service, strictly multiplayer games, probably going to go to PC day one alongside PlayStation. Big single player games, you know, release on PS5 first and then come to PC later. That's how I think that's going to stay pretty much the status quo. I mean, heck, they bought Nixxes. Like the whole point of or Nixies, however you say it. The whole point of buying that studio was to work on PC ports, so. Jason Benjamin. Benji, do you think Sonic Superstars will do well despite being released in a busy month like October and sandwiched between big releases, or do you think it's dead on arrival? Sonic fans are super fans. Like the hardcore Sonic community, you know, because I follow and consider, it's weird. You know how like you have like mutuals on Twitter or whatever where you've never met in real life, but you feel like you kind of know each other? That's me with like Games Cage Hype Guy. I'm sure you guys have all seen Games Cage. Me and him don't like sit there and talk all the time at all. Like occasionally, you know, we'll like reply to each other and interact, but like we've both followed each other for so long that like I feel like I know him. And he follows me. He probably feels the same way. And obviously, he's a massive Sonic fan. So I see constantly how the Sonic community interacts with him. And I can tell you, Sonic fans are super fans. So do I expect Sonic Superstars to do well with the core Sonic community? Yeah, I don't think it would matter if it launched the same day as Call of Duty, if I'm being honest with you. Like, Sonic fans are Sonic fans. They're going to buy Sonic. So with the straight up Sonic community, I wouldn't be worried about Superstars at all. The question is can, you know, Superstars break out past the hardcore Sonic community, kind of like how Frontiers did, right? I have never played a Sonic game in my life. And no, that's not true. I've never played a 3D Sonic game in my life. I've played old Sonics like on Sega Genesis and stuff, aging myself here. But, you know, I've played like Sonic 2, that sort of thing. I had never actually played a 3D Sonic, none of them. And I bought Frontiers, and I really enjoyed it, right? That was a game that broke out past that hardcore Sonic community. I would say Superstars may have some trouble with that. It's a much more traditional Sonic game, which the hardcore Sonic fan base is going to love about it. Part of what I think attracted people to Frontiers that were not Sonic fans was it felt new. And with that month being so stacked, you know, it might find difficulty breaking out past Sonic fans is what I would say. But I think it'll do very, very well with that Sonic community. I think they're going to probably love it. I wouldn't expect Frontiers level performance out of it, though, at all. If it happens, great, but I would not expect that. Benji, why do you think Nintendo keeps their hardware specs below Xbox and PlayStation? Costs. Is it simply to keep their hardware cheaper? Yes. Or do you think they don't believe in high specs? It's literally just about price tag. If they could get a Switch that's as powerful as PlayStation 5 for the price that they want to do it, there's not a doubt in my mind they would do it. Nintendo, the truth is they sell to lots of kids and families. I know this because I've sold Nintendo consoles at retail locations for the last 15 years of my life. Like my whole adult life, I've worked in gaming retail, specifically that, gaming retail. Many, many years at GameStop, and now I'm at another big box retailer selling lots and lots of games there too. And every time I say this, I try and say, hey, it's not me saying that like Nintendo games are for kids, right? You see some people that are Nintendo haters or whatever try and say that like they're just too kiddie. You know, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, do I sell more Switch consoles and DS or 3DS, you know, back then? Do I sell more of that to kids than PlayStations or Xbox? Yes, it's not even close. Like they're not even in the same stratosphere. The people buying Xboxes and PlayStations, not that there's not young, 10-year-olds that are playing on those, but like the vast bulk of PlayStations and Xboxes that I sell are to adults. That's just the truth, right? Late teenage, like high school through adulthood. Switches, I sell that to parents buying for their kids like every single day. Like every single day I sell Switches like that. I sell Switches to adults too, but like the amount of families and specifically children that are getting Nintendo consoles is vastly higher than other platforms. And for a family with young kids, which I have a kid, they're expensive and they like to break stuff. For parents with young kids, it's going to be a lot harder to be like, hey, buy a $500, PlayStation 5 for my 7-year-old, or hey, get a $299 Switch. That's really what it comes down to. It's literally price tag. Nintendo knows their audience. They know that they sell to families and kids as well as adults, but huge spectrum. And by having that cheaper price tag, it's much easier to sell it to those families and kids. So they'll never, again, it's all about price. They're going to get the best hardware they can for the price envelope that they need. But you're never going to see Nintendo again, I think, get into a power race specifically, just trying to be like the most powerful console. I don't think you'll ever see that again from Nintendo because it's not their business. Bigelow says the stream needs royalty-free music at the beginning so that it's not dead air. Bigelow, totally agree. At some point, I'll probably do that. But if part of the reason my YouTube channel does not grow is this is a DIY low investment project for me. If you notice, I'm literally in a room with only gray walls. There's a freaking old TV right there that I got to get rid of. Not exactly the coolest background, not exactly the slickest graphics. My picture on YouTube is just like a random selfie. Like, Bigelow, I should do that. There's a million things that I should do to grow my YouTube channel, but you know what? At some point, maybe I'll pull it together. But you're not wrong. I mean, I agree with you, Bigelow. Infinity Doc, with Quest 3 release date announced, how do you think it will do? Personally, don't see it beat Quest 2. Quest 2 did extremely well. So do I think it will sell the volume of Quest 2? Quest 2 was also during prime pandemic, by the way. When we saw tons of hardware and video game stuff increase in sales. Yeah, I would agree. I don't expect Quest 3 to sell Quest 2 volume, but it's going to still do very well. I mean, I'm buying a Quest 3 day one. It's going to do well. Yeah, it'll do well by VR standards. But I would agree. Infinity Doc, I would agree. I don't expect Quest 2 sales volume out of it. But it'll definitely do better than Quest 1, and it'll do well overall by VR standards. Unless like the AR stuff becomes a huge hit, I'm not really interested in AR much. I'm much more interested in like true VR. But Quest 3 can do AR in a way Quest 2 never could. So unless like the AR stuff starts getting popular with people, I would agree. Ghost Tunnels, how long do you think the SAG-AFTRA strike for video games will last? And do you think there will be major delays from many titles coming in 2024 and beyond? It's an interesting question. I would expect delays to not be near as impacted as it was for movies and television, because the reality is that lots of video game development can be done without the voice actors, right? Like you can essentially build a ton of the game. This isn't me saying voice actors, by the way, aren't important, not by any means, but I'm saying like, you can work on the gameplay mechanics. You can work on the visuals. Like, you can work on so much stuff without the voice actors that, like, tons of work can still get done. Could there be potentially some delays out of it? Sure, potentially, depending on how long this thing drags out. But it's not going to be near the same as, like, how SAG-AFTRA strikes affected movies and TVs, because, like, writers for, like, the writers strike, you know, which is a different thing, but the writers strike, you can't make movies and TVs without a script. And also the actor strike, you can't film anything without actors, right? Besides, like, animated projects. So it's like, that was, like, devastating to those industries. People haven't even seen the impact, by the way, from those strikes yet. Like, you think it feels slow now? Like, once these strikes are over, like, yes, work is going to be able to get back on track. But think about it. We've gone months and months and months with nothing being filmed. Like, all of this stuff that's releasing right now is stuff that was filmed a long time ago. We're about to hit, probably in like 3 or 4 months, an insane drought of content for movies and television. So as we feel that impact of, like, when nothing was being filmed for months or written for months. So the SAG-AFTRA strike in games, I suspect, won't be near as impactful. Hopefully they get a good contract out of it. Will there potentially be some small delays here and there? Sure, the potential's there, but I wouldn't expect it to be like this massively devastating thing to the video game industry. What would be a devastating thing to the video game industry is if developers unionized, like, and they went on strike. Like, if you saw, like, the actual studios themselves unionizing and striking, that would be truly devastating to the industry, yeah. But voice actors specifically, there's just so much other stuff they can do while they wait for that to get worked out. Max Mini, end of March next year is end of their fiscal year, so it looks like it's on his terms. Yeah, very well could be. Execs usually get huge bonuses based on fiscal year performance. Again, absolutely could be. Very well could truly be that Jim just wanted to retire. You know, who knows? Ricardo, Jim retiring is confirming Xbox got Activision 100%. Nah, I don't think that has anything to do with it. The main thing that I wondered if this isn't his choosing is if it was a strategy thing. Like, you know, Sony internally just felt like they needed a change up in leadership for the strategy and things. I think it would be that more than it would be Activision. And again, this could be a true retirement from Jim. But if it for some reason wasn't, if this was handed down to him, I think it would be just more about strategy and that sort of thing than Activision specifically. Make sure no channel members have come in. I know there's no super chats, but let me make sure that every channel member's gotten a question. Oh, there was a super chat. 2 super chat from OniX. In my opinion, got fired. Sony need to adjust no ABK ZeniMax games. OniX again, I just think if he was to get fired, I don't think it would have been about Activision specifically, because really there's nothing Jim Ryan could have done about that. Like, Jim Ryan's not the one who makes a stay on if Microsoft gets Activision or not, right? That's regulators. Jim basically did everything he could to try and shut that thing down. So if he was to get fired, I think it would just have to do with, like, their own strategy and their own, like, you know, things. I think it would be more of an internal thing than Activision specifically. Because, again, Jim just has no power to block that. He can make statements. He can do this sort of thing he can do. But at the end of the day, it's up to the FTC. It's up to the CMA. It's up to, you know, the courts and the judges. Like, it's all about that. So I personally don't think Activision really had much to do with it. But I appreciate the super chat. Jacob Novick with a super chat. I'm not sure the currency, but with a 20. Hi, Xbox XS has surpassed 500,000 sold in Japan. Oh, sweet. I actually haven't even looked at the most recent Japanese sales. It's funny. As a guy who's super interested in sales, I've always been the oddball in the sales community that I'm not as invested in Japanese sales as, like, a lot of people are. I get why so many people are invested in Japanese sales because, I mean, honestly, nowadays, out of any market, it's the most visible data we get. So I get why so many salespeople still love watching the Japan sales. I look at them, but I'll be honest, I haven't even looked at them today. Was today the milestone? I'm on install base right now looking at it. Indeed it has. Yep, this week was the week. Xbox has passed 500,000 hardware sales in Japan. Cool to see. Early on, Xbox looked like pretty actually exciting in terms of like growth compared to other Xbox consoles. Now, it never looked like Xbox was going to be like this absolute juggernaut in Japan and PlayStation and Nintendo better watch out. It was never one of those sort of scenarios, but it was one of those things like, hey, doing quite a bit better than like what we saw out of Xbox One and, you know, tracking to do like, you know, much, I'm talking like, you know, a year or two ago when we were first seeing these numbers start to grow in Japan. You know, looks like it's going to outsell original Xbox, you know, looks like it's only going to come second behind Xbox 360 there. So like super cool. I know though it has slowed down. Like if you look at that year to date, gap, like year to date, Xbox this year has sold 109,000 compared to last year to date 221. Wow, like more than double last year did over this year. So Xbox has definitely stalled out in Japan compared to how it was doing. Still awesome to see it over 500,000. Hopefully this thing goes on to continue sell and maybe some first party software can push it even higher. So it's super cool to see. Yeah, I'm always going to be happy for seeing sales increases anywhere for anyone. I want this whole industry to be healthy and thriving. Benji with a 5 super chat. Benji, Matt Piscatella seems confident PS5 will hit 25 million thanks to Spider-Man 2. Daniel Ahmed and Dave Gibson feel Sony will miss the mark. Your call. I think they'll miss too. They haven't been putting up the numbers that looks like they're going to hit 25 million. Now, it could be that Matt is 100% right, and me and Daniel and Dave are all going to get egg on our face for doubting them. You never know, right? We've seen some pretty crazy performances out of Sony in the past. I will say that Spider-Man will have to be an absolute hardware-selling monster for it to happen. Because right now, they're just not tracking for that 25 mil. Now, who knows? Maybe this Spider-Man, I mean, we all know how Spider-Man 2 is, how big it's going to be. Look at how big the first one in Miles Morales were. Like, there's not a doubt in my mind it's going to move a ton of hardware. The question to me is, can it move enough to get to 25 million? Like, god dang, dude. Benji, I'll say as of now, and thank you for the super chat, I would say as of now, I'm on the same boat as Daniel and Dave, where we're doubting it. But we could all be wrong. Maybe Matt is going to be the one who comes out here and is like, look, you guys don't know what you're talking about at all. Matt knows what's up. I mean, it very well could go to him, right? Very well could. Hey, listen, none of us know any of this stuff for sure. If we did, we'd all be millionaires. I have talked to every person you're mentioning personally. I've talked to Matt Piscatella off the record. I've talked to Daniel Ahmed. I've talked to Dave. Like, I've talked to all of these people. If any of us knew for sure, like everything, we would all be just absolutely filthy rich because we could predict the stock market and everything perfectly. So who knows? It's a fun little debate. Matt could absolutely be right. It'll be a fun test to see. But yeah, right now I'm more with Daniel and Dave. All right. I haven't talked to them about the 25 million prediction, by the way, though. So don't get that twisted. Sorry. If it came across us saying I've talked to them about this whole 25 million, that I haven't. I just mean in general, I've talked to all of these sort of people. Batman Forever. What's your thoughts on Sega Europe? Oh, we actually talked about that, Batman Forever. Captain Crunch, crazy times. Nice to see you, Benji. Great to see you, Captain Crunch. Great to see you. Carl Labise, Jim retiring as a 30-year executive who's made tons of money leaving on top. Yeah, probably. It's probably the most likely scenario, right? At very, very first, before we heard retirement, I was thinking, oh, he must have got let go. Because I didn't see why Jim would retire right now. Because PlayStation is doing so well, and I'm sure he's so well paid. So, like, when the news first broke, I was like, oh man, I guess they're letting go at Jim. Like, I guess something really went down internally. Then we found out later, because we didn't have the retirement wording at first. We just heard that he was leaving. Then we got retirement, and at first I'm like, is this a real retirement? is this real? But as more time has passed, as I've had more time to think on it, I think he probably truly is retiring at the end of the day. He has been there for 30 years. I mean, that is a long time. He's still young enough that he could work for a long time still. As far as I know, I looked it up. I think Jim is still in his mid-50s. I think he's 56. Like, he could still work for a long time if he wanted to. But it very well could be like you're saying, Carl. It's just like, hey, I've spent 30 years here. I've got a ton of money in the bank. I don't really need to work if I don't want to. And maybe he's just not as passionate about it, right? Things change. Maybe he's not as passionate about being a PlayStation leader as he was for, the last 30 years he's been there. So, and giving that it's months from now at the end of the fiscal year does not equate to firing. Shawn Laden was more likely fired. Yeah, Shawn, I believe, was truly fired. I've never had Shawn tell me that. I've interacted with Shawn a bit on Twitter. He seems very nice. He's actually been very supportive of me at times whenever I was feeling down. He's made some really nice comments to me on Twitter. Shawn seems like a great guy. I have never heard, I've never had Shawn or anyone directly tell me he was fired, but that was definitely the vibe. I think that was a massive mistake, if I'm being honest with you. If Shawn Laden was truly fired, that was a bad call, man. Sunset Nebula, Counter-Strike 2 as well. It just came out. Yeah, Counter-Strike's doing insane numbers. It did almost 1.5 million concurrent today on Steam. Absolutely insane. Counter-Strike is a monster. Samuel Tolbert, great friend of mine. Check out Samuel Tolbert's work. Windows Central, all sorts of places. Follow him on Twitter. Great journalist, great friend of mine. Samuel is the man. Yo, Benji, hope you're doing well. One interesting thought is that Jim Ryan's legacy won't truly be known for a couple more years. You're right. A lot of the projects that are in development under him haven't released, right? Almost all PS first-party games so far this gen were signed years ago. That's an excellent point, Samuel. That's an excellent point that we all need to keep in mind. Games take so long to develop right now, 5-6 years, that a lot of this stuff was probably greenlit under Shawn Laden or very, very early in Jim's cycle. So, yeah, you are right, Samuel. We really won't know, the true legacy of, the choices he made during his reign until, the end of this generation. Honestly, right? We're in 2023 now. We think this generation is going to go to about 2028. Games that have been being signed from him under the last year or two, lots of games take 5+ years to make. Some of them, obviously, that he signed will have already been in development for several years, so we'll see him over the next year or two. Great point, Samuel. We won't truly see his legacy until the end of the PS5 cycle, because honestly, most of the decisions he's made are going to carry through to the end of this cycle. Whoever's coming in to replace him, that's not going to be until 2024. Most of the decisions they make in terms of let's say game library, that will be PS6 when you start to see that pay off. Now there's some business decisions and strategy decisions they can make, for PS5 that will impact directly the PS5 gen. But to be honest, in terms of the games they greenlight and the decisions they make around the first party game strategy, that's going to be PS6 stuff. That ain't even going to be PS5. So it's a great point. Great point, Samuel. Sunset Nebula. Hey, Benji, was Hyenas revealed at the PS Showcase? I'm going to be real with you, and I feel bad for saying this. I forgot Hyenas was a game that existed, so I have no idea. I feel really bad. But whenever I saw, Hyenas, canceled by Sega, I was like, oh, yeah, that is a game. So I could not tell you, Sunset Nebula. I could not tell you when that game was announced because I actually forgot it was even a game. Oh, sorry, there's a weird noise. I was like, what is this? Oh, whoa, I think we just got a very generous super chat. Did, yeah, 20 here from Grizzly Bear King. First of all, it's incredibly kind. And second of all, Grizzly Bear's message is take my money. Well, Grizzly Bear, dude, that's very, very generous of you. 20 super chat is very generous. If you have a question or comment, definitely drop that, man. I appreciate the 20. That is super, super nice. But, if there's anything you want to talk about, if there's anything you want to discuss. Oh, Jim's 63. But then Jacob says Jim Ryan was 53 by 2021. That's what I found, too. I found he was 53 in 2021, which would make him 55, 56 now. But maybe that's not right. If Jim is truly 63, Oh, yeah, he should retire. Not that that's like super old, but with how much money he has in the bank, I'm sure. If I was Jim, I'd definitely retire. If I was 63. But like I said, what I found was he was like 55, 56. But I will say it makes a lot more sense to me if Jim is actually mid 60s. Then I'd be like, yeah, dude, you got so much money in the bank. Might as well enjoy it. So that does change my perspective. I thought he still had like a good 10 years he could work if he wanted to. But we'll have to see. The info I found was he was 53 in 2021, like Jacob said. Yeah, Blazing Flame says, no, Jim is 55, 56. Yeah, exactly. That's what I had found. If so, I would think he'd still want to work another, 5, 6 years, whatever. He could make a lot of money in that time frame. But hey, to each their own. I'm sure he's got enough money that he can retire happily if he wants. Grizzly Bear King followed up the 20 super chat with another incredibly kind 5 super chat. Grizzly Bear King saying, no questions, just take my money. Well, it's very kind of you, Grizzly Bear, making me laugh. I appreciate that. That's very generous and very kind of you. All right. We're going to go for about 15 minutes, guys, and then I'm out. So we got about 15 minutes of the chat left. Thanks for an awesome turnout. Thanks for all the support, as always. Love these streams. They're the best. I always feel bad because whenever my streams aren't huge, right? Like I say all the time, they average right around 1,000 views per stream. Some of them can be a little higher, some of them can be a little lower. But if you average it out, right around 1,000 views, not some like giant YouTuber or anything, but every time I get these like extended breaks, like I forget, like, some people just really enjoy these chats. I do too, of course. I'm the host, right? Of course I'm enjoying it, but I always have people hit me up every single time I'm absent for like 2 or 3 weeks. Like, dude, where's the live chat, man? I missed the live chat. So thank you so much, guys. George Corona III, you should really, really, really hit Baldur's Gate 3 if you haven't yet. George Corona, I'm absolutely going to. My plan, I looked at how long it takes to play the game, howlongtobeat.com. Very useful tool for planning things out. And I see it's very, very long. My plan is to squeeze that in on November or December. So I'll absolutely have it done this year, because I want to make sure I play it before we get to like the game of the year stuff, like my personal lists. But like I don't want to start it right now because in October there's like so much stuff dropping. And I looked, and Cyberpunk is a long game, but Cyberpunk's shorter than Baldur's Gate, at least according to How Long to Beat. So I was like, all right, I can probably successfully get through Cyberpunk better than Baldur's, and I don't want to feel like I'm rushing Baldur's. And in November, I think like I'm literally only buying Call of Duty. And in December, who knows if I'll actually buy it. And then in December, I think I'm only buying Avatar. So it's like, I should have plenty of time in those months. So I am going to play George Corona III. I'm just going to squeeze it in after October. Either November or December. Kazimo, sup Benji? How are you, man? Hope you're good. Doing better, buddy. I saw a hands-on video about Alan Wake 2 and it got me pretty excited to play it. Do I need to play the first one? Well, here's what I'll say. I will say that I am 100% sure that if you play Alan Wake 1 before 2, you will enjoy 2 way more. Because Alan Wake is such a narrative-heavy game. Like, the reason that Alan Wake is one of my favorite games of all time, I'll just tell you straight up, is nothing to do with the gameplay. Like, Alan Wake 1, at the time it came out, was never, like, this just, wow, the gameplay is just so incredible, even back then. And you go to now, and, it's definitely aged in a lot of ways, right? It's not like a mechanically great-feeling game to play. But the people who absolutely love Alan Wake, like myself, we love it because we love that story. Very Stephen King inspired, very Twin Peaks inspired, amazing atmosphere. I myself used to do a lot of writing creatively. Now I don't anymore, but in like my kid through teenage years, I used to do a lot of creative writing. So I've always felt an attachment to writers. And I mean, Alan Wake's a writer. So like, I just adore the game, and it's super narrative heavy. So I'm sure that if you play Alan Wake 1 before 2, Alan Wake 2 is going to just be way better for you. That being said they've structured Alan Wake 2 in a way that you don't have to play Alan Wake 1 first. I suspect the way they've done that, and I don't know, I haven't played the game yet, but I suspect they're going to tell you through Saga's storyline, who's a new character, right? Alan Wake 2 is different than 1 in that there's 2 playable protagonists, whereas the first game you're just playing as Alan Wake. This one you're playing as, a police officer named Saga and Alan. And I suspect the way they're going to structure that to where if you're a newbie is Saga is probably going to find out a lot of what happened in Alan Wake 1. So that's probably how they're going to explain it to newcomers. I'd say, I'm sure Cosimo, even if you don't want to take the time to play Alan Wake 1, it's not a super long game. I'm sure there's great story recaps on YouTube. I would say I would at least try and find a good story recap on YouTube of the first game before going into 2. I think it will be beneficial to you if you at least know the events of the first game. I think so. And you know how there's all those, someone I'm sure has made like a 15 or 20 minute story recap for Alan Wake 1 that you could find. Venom Harness. Hey, Benji, some games like Spider-Man Remastered, Miles, etc. make you get up to 120 FPS when having 40 FPS plus VRR, but not many games do that. Do you think that will happen more often with PS5 Pro? You're saying how they do that 40 FPS mode that Insomniac, for example, has done in their games. Will we see more of that? Sure. I'm sure you'll see better frame rates across the board, including 120 FPS modes on Pro. I'm sure, yeah. I wouldn't expect you're going to get 120 FPS on every game, right? Especially these massive Unreal Engine 5 games. But could you see more indies or AA games or multiplayer games start to target 120 FPS on PS5 Pro? I'm sure. Yeah, you'll probably see some of it. I would say more than base PlayStation 5, sure. But I wouldn't expect, you're going to get 120 FPS on the next Witcher game on Unreal Engine 5, right? That ain't going to happen. You'll probably get 60, though. I think the main advantage you'll see on frame rate on Pro isn't going to be up to 120. Again, maybe some multiplayer games and stuff like that. It becomes more common to have 120 FPS modes. I think the big advantage you'll see is just a lot more games hitting 60. We're starting to see, not all, but we're starting to see a lot of current gen games start to taper back to 30 FPS modes. You'll probably just get a lot more consistently 60 FPS games than 120. And definitely some more of the 40 FPS modes too. Cricket 365, according to you, how many copies of Starfield have sold on Steam? I got no idea. No clue. I'm sure there's some estimates on there from Steam Spy and stuff. Let's see. Let's see what the estimators are putting on there. Keep in mind this could be ridiculously inaccurate, but this is just what so the play tracker, listen to this range. It's massive, right? This shows you how hard it kind of is to estimate. But Play Tracker estimates 1.41 million. That seems low to me. I don't think that's accurate. Gamealytic says 2.57 million. VG Insights says 2.68 million. And Steam Spy says 6.3 million. Here's what I'll say. I think that Play Tracker is definitely too low, and I think that Steam Spy is definitely too high. So we're talking a massive range there, right? 1.4 million all the way up to 6.3 million. We're talking about a 5 mil gap between those. So I will say that. Play Tracker too low, Steam Spy too high. Who knows where it is in between that? Hard to say. Hard to say. Hamishly Ford dropping in late saying hello. What's up, Hamish? Great to see you, buddy. And also Kellegrim dropping in. What is up, Kellegrim? Came into the chat super late and spent this entire time watching at double speed to catch up. I probably sound crazy at double speed. I probably sound like a maniac. That is hilarious, though, Kellegrim. I probably sound so funny. I've never done that. I've never rewatched one of my videos at 2x speed. I always rewatch my stream once just to see what I made mistakes on or what didn't come across the way I wanted it to. That way I'm just more prepared moving forward. There's always an annoying thing I'll catch in there that where I, like, in my brain I'm saying a certain name or something right, but then it comes out wrong, which is always annoying, where I'll be talking about like one game and I'll like say a different game. There's always little things like that, but I always rewatch my stream one time just to be like, okay, what did I mess up on? What can I do better? And what didn't come across the way I meant it to. But I've never done 2X. I probably sound hilarious. And great to see you, Telegram. Logan Hardy. Hey, Benji. I hope PlayStation don't abandon their live service initiative after James is gone. I think you mean Jim. Because they need that 1-2 big hit so they don't have to depend on third party, in my opinion. Yeah, they do need to do some live service. Yep. That's what I always say. Right? I'm always like, listen, I think that some of these publishers need to pull back from going all in on live service, but you still definitely need to be making some, right? It's business negligence if you're just doing zero investment into live service, because the reality is, if you can happen to get one of these giant ones to hit, you're going to make so much freaking money. So yes, you are right? Like, some people want Sony to make no live service games, right? Like how basically the PS4 generation was. The reality is Sony had barely any investment into multiplayer during the PS4 generation. That doesn't mean there was none. Uncharted 4 had multiplayer, right? We saw Ghost of Tsushima after launch get a multiplayer mode. So it's not that they had like zero, but it was just like very, very little. It was like 95% investment into single player. They don't need to do that. That is a mistake. You should be making some multiplayer. So I agree. Hopefully they don't completely abandon doing some live service stuff. They won't. They bought Bungie, for goodness sakes. But I think they do need to be careful on how much they invest, though. Danger Man, also about this, a lot of debate about live service. Considering how Hyenas has been canned, that doesn't look good for a lot of the non-canceled Sony first-party games. Sure, they're still there, but we are not going to see 10 of them being in development. Yeah, I agree. Maybe Sony is going to pull back on some of this live service. Everybody should be careful about it. Live Supremacy saying, what's up? What's up, Live Supremacy? Blazing Flame. Do you think they will continue to expand studios and teams? Let's run a poll. We'll do one more poll before this chat ends. Let's run a poll. I'll say, how do you think PlayStation strategy looks under new leadership? We'll say very similar to Jim Ryan strategy. We'll say some changes, but similar. But I don't want to use the word similar because I already used it. Or maybe I'll change the way the first one stated. We'll say, see, the problem is there's not much room. We'll say almost I don't think that'll fit. We'll say almost same to Jim Ryan. So almost same, like it's almost the same thing. Very little change. We'll say some changes, but similar. And then we'll say very different strategy. All right. So how do you think PlayStation strategy looks under new leadership? Almost the same to Jim's. So that means I'm asking, do you think it's going to have very little change? Of course, there's always going to be a few things, but it's going to be almost exactly the way Jim Ryan laid out their strategy around PC, around expansion, all of that stuff. Then we'll say some changes. So there's definitely going to be noticeable change, but at the end of the day, pretty similar. Or we'll say very different. All right. We'll go for like another 5 or 10 minutes or so. Exotic Prem YouTube. Do you think they will keep porting PS games to PC? We did answer that. Yes, I do think they're going to still port games to PC. Alan Baker saying Sid Schumann. Eric Limpel. for like replacements. Felipe Cole? Reggie would be fun to see. Wow, that would be a wild curveball, wouldn't it? What if it was Reggie? Wow, that would be a curveball. All of a sudden, Reggie jumps in. Could you imagine Reggie as head of PlayStation? What a... Like, Reggie felt so Nintendo to me. Like, it would be so wild. What a curveball. X, isn't Herman overseeing game development at PlayStation? I feel like he'd be quite comfortable in that role. You mean like not wanting to move up, like staying where he's at? You know, that is actually a good point. One we didn't consider. What if Herman himself does not want to move up? You know, like we kept talking like, or when I say we, I should say I. You know, I think of it as a conversation between me and you guys, but, you know, I'm the only one here really talking. You know, I kept thinking of this as maybe Sony necessarily didn't want to promote Herman. Maybe Sony wasn't sure that they wanted him yet, or, you know, maybe he was in competition. Dude, the actual curveball here is what if Herman himself does not want to move up? Like you said, he's like leading game development, which is something he's definitely going to be comfortable in that role, because that's essentially what he did at his previous job at Guerrilla, right? You know, he was overseeing the games they were making. He's basically doing the same thing now, just across all PlayStation studios. So that's a great point, X. I mean, Herman himself might not want to move up. Like, maybe even Sony approached him and Herman was like, nah, I really like the job I have now and I don't want to move up to that. Because that is a very different role, right? What Jim Ryan is doing is very different than what Herman Holst is doing. Herman Holst is very much... Not that there's not business decisions being made by Herman Holst, but he's very much in the creative. How are these games coming together? How are the teams looking? Jim is like very business focused. And it could be Herman doesn't want to do that. So it's a great point. Perfect Shogun. It's going to be Bobby K. Super funny, but definitely not. Bobby is done, at least in gaming. I don't think anyone will hire Bobby once he's gone. Oni X. Now they're making 15 Assassin's Creed games, Benji. It is like an insane number. It's like all Assassin's Creed all the time. I hope you guys like Assassin's Creed, because you're about to get like 10 or 15 of them. I love Assassin's Creed. Like that's a franchise I've always loved, but we'll see how it goes. Jeremy G also says Bobby getting the gig after his contract expires in Q1 would be hilarious. And then Johan, Benji, imagine Sony would hire Bobby Kotick. Samuel saying Neil Druckmann or maybe Mark Cerny. I think that they are both such creatives. I don't think that they would have any interest in a business type position. You know, obviously Neil's going to have to deal with some business stuff as being the leader at Naughty Dog. You know, he's got to have a profitable studio, I'm sure. I'm sure Sony communicates that to all their studios. We want you to be profitable. But Neil is a creative first and foremost. And Mark Cerny is also a creative in his own way, right? He's designing hardware and trying to, you know, get like what he can out of the hardware and what's the best thing. So like both great guys, both excellent at what they do. But I just don't think that they are as business focused as it would need to be for that sort of position. Notarji, Benji, do you think this news is good, bad, or not relevant for people still waiting on Bloodborne, Demon Souls, and GT PC's version? Yeah, I don't think I don't think Jim Ryan has any impact on any of that. I suspect the reason Bloodborne hasn't come back is From just isn't doing it. From seems all in on multi-platform. And I know they've said in the past like they would be interested in returning to Bloodborne, but I wonder if... because otherwise Sony's insane. I've said this a million times. If the hurdle here is not coming from Software side, but it's coming from Sony's side on why they're not making Bloodborne, you guys are out of your mind. In the slim chance a high-ranking Sony employee sees this, I know high-ranking Xbox people see my streams, not all the time, but I know that they do watch. If by the slimmest of margins, a high-ranking PlayStation employee watches this stream, you are out of your mind if you just keep sitting on Bloodborne. Have you seen what happened with From Software after Elden Ring? I'm telling you right now, if you release a Bloodborne sequel made by From Software, it will outsell the total lifetime sales of the first Bloodborne so rapidly, it's insane. Like, if the debate within Sony is, well, you know, Bloodborne did okay, but it wasn't like this mega seller for us, I would say you're not seeing the forest for the trees, or however the statement goes. Like, you cannot look at that first game sales. What From Software is now, compared to where they were when they made Bloodborne, is a whole different ball game. So they're crazy. So my assumption, me saying that, is me saying I assume the hurdle here is coming from Software side and not coming from Sony's. Because if it's coming from Sony's, they're out of their mind. They're absolutely out of their mind. Benji. Hi, Benji. Oh, I actually already answered that. Shinko Steam. I think Shawn Laden was pretty much burned out. He suggested so in later interviews. Totally could be. Totally could be. Like I said, I've never talked to Shawn about that sort of thing. I haven't talked to Shawn much outside of like Twitter interactions. All right, we're about to leave. I'm just trying to pick out like a couple more. Oh, wow. Bullexto. Sega said they hope Superstars sells around the same as Frontiers. I doubt it will do that. I agree, Bullexto. That would be a fun and happy surprise for me if you saw Superstars sell like Frontiers, but I'm not expecting that. No. No, I'm not at all. But, I mean, I'm wrong about predictions, you know, all the time. So, but I wouldn't expect that, no. Hopefully, when Sega says they hope, it is truly that. Hopefully, it's a hope and not a forecast, because those are two different things, right? A forecast and a hope, very different. Forecast means, all right, this is what we expect. Hope means it'd be great, right? I hope that PlayStation hires me to go be the CEO like Jim Ryan is. That'll never happen, right? So hope and forecast, very different. So again, I haven't seen Sega's exact comments on what they expect Superstars to sell, but I very much hope that's not the forecast, because I do not expect that to sell like Frontiers. Vlad's, will next PlayStation CEO end console exclusivity? Thinking emoji? I don't think so. All right, we're about to go. We're about to go. We're about to go. We're about to go. Oh, JCat. What's up, JCat? Just saw that you were here. Thanks for helping mod the channel as always, JCat. You're awesome. It's great to see you. One or two more. One or two more. One or two more. No, Joseki, no disrespect to Shu, but Iwata was a unique case and we'll probably never have another Iwata-style CEO. I actually agree with that, Joseki. Love Shu. Shu is like one of the most pure people in this video game industry. I think pretty much everyone loves Shu, but I can't see Shu getting the job. Sorry for the dead air. I'm just trying to pick out a couple more while we go out. Blazing Flame, do you think Herman will stay as head of PlayStation or be replaced as soon as a new CEO comes? I think you mean like Herman's position. I don't think Herman's in any danger. Herman always seemed like a very smart guy who was very good at what he did at Guerrilla. So We haven't really seen the payoffs of what he's doing right now because, as we discussed earlier with Jim Ryan, this sort of thing takes years to play out. We won't really know the things that Herman's doing with these studios for another, starting now, sure, of course. But we won't fully know for another 2, 3, 4 years. But I suspect he's doing a good job. Kellegram, apparently there's a semi-political question. Let's see. Depends. I might answer this, I might not. Kellegram says, my question, if there's time, to follow up on the earlier question on unionization in the industry, what are your thoughts on it? Assuming there isn't an immediate strike, do I think that game devs should unionize? Probably, yeah. Probably. Unions can be a complicated thing, right? We've seen some unions get out of control before, right? It's not unheard of. There have been times where unions have overstepped, where they've actually caused issues. However, there's also tons and tons and tons of examples of unionization being good. I know that video game devs have it rough in many, many ways in terms of crunch culture, in terms of pay. A lot of game devs leave game dev because they can go develop in other fields and make way more money than they do in game dev. So they're arguably underpaid compared to what developers in other industries do. They have to deal with things like crunch culture, all sort of things. Like, in terms of are we asking if it would be the best thing for the actual devs and not necessarily the best thing for consumers, because those aren't always the same thing. Sometimes something that's great for developers is also great for us consumers in terms, what I mean. But them going on strike and unionizing, let's just be real. It would cause massive delays in the industry. It would cause huge shutdowns all over the place. And then even once they got their union stuff settled, I'm sure that there would be things in there against crunch culture, so that would also impact game releases. I think that extreme crunch isn't something any studio should be doing anyways, but let's just be real, it's commonly practiced in the industry, so that could also impact game dev time. So wouldn't necessarily always be the best thing maybe for the consumer, but I think it would be the best thing for the game devs, yes, if they did unionize. I absolutely think so. All right, we gotta bounce, except for a super chat and J2 Blue in the Sky. They're gonna get the last ones because Highlander did a super chat, a 5 super chat, very generous. Thank you, Highlander. My daughter turns 12 this weekend. She wanted to go to the Ren Fair. Yeah, you told me, so I can buy her a real sword or axe. My wife and her mom blame me. Yeah, you had mentioned last week that you were thinking about taking her to the Ren Fair and getting one. That's funny. They blame you. Hey, I get blamed a lot of stuff too. The new blame is, I'm sure, not in a mean way, in a teasing way. My daughter is now starting to get very into video games. That can definitely be blamed on me. My daughter is, she's 5, and she's just starting to get into Mario. She always wants me to play New Super Mario Brothers on Switch with her at night after her bath. She gets a bath, we sit on the couch, and we play some New Super Mario Brothers together. It's super cool. So Highlander, I can relate on our passions getting passed to our kids. And then J2 Blue in the Sky channel member is going to finish us off here, because he's a channel member who hasn't had something answered. J2 Blue in the Sky, Superstars will probably do better than Mania, but not sure about Frontiers. Yeah, exactly. That's where I'm at. I could definitely see it doing better than Mania. The general excitement for the Sonic brand seems like much stronger place than it was back when Mania came out. We've had the movies do well. We had Frontiers do super, super well. It was on pace. I haven't kept up lately. I don't know if there was a new milestone, but Frontiers was on pace to become the best-selling 3D Sonic game ever. That's how it was tracking. I don't know if that's changed because I'll be honest, I just haven't seen a sales milestone update for a while on Frontiers. Maybe there was one I missed. So the general Sonic brand feels like in a much more healthy spot than at times in the past. So I could definitely see it doing better than Mania, but I don't know if it's going to do Frontiers type numbers. All right, guys, let's read this poll and then we're out. I asked you, how do you think PlayStation strategy looks under new leadership? The leader of the poll, 63%, say some changes, so some definitely noticeable changes, but similar. Second place said 22%, almost the same to the Jim Ryan strategy. So you think it's going to be like just so close. It's like almost the same thing. And then 14% of you think it's going to be very different. I think the right winner of the poll is probably right. Some changes, but similar. I think that we might see some change-ups in terms of the games as a service strategies. Again, not abandoning games as a service, but maybe not being this ultra hyper aggressive, how things were starting to look under Jim, where it was like 50% of their investment practically was in live service and, like 10 of them coming within a certain amount of time. Like maybe you see them pull back on that a little bit. Maybe you see some changes in terms of acquisition strategy. Like, I think you're probably right. I think the leader of the poll is probably right. I think it's going to be some changes, but similar or almost the same to Jim Ryan. The biggest surprise to me would be very different just because PlayStation's been so successful under Jim Ryan. I would be surprised if they went very different. All right, guys, we're wrapping the poll there. Thanks to all the channel members. Thanks to all of the people that gave super chats. Thanks to JCat and Split End for helping modding the channel. Thanks to all of you that showed up to the stream, that dropped questions. That's the only way the stream can happen, is if you guys are here and being interactive. And we're going to bounce, guys. Thanks so much for all of the support, as always, on all platforms that you guys interact with me on. Like the video if you haven't. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Follow me on Twitter/X for some reason if you haven't. And we're going to end it there, guys. Thanks so much. Have a great one. As always, stay safe, play some games, and I will catch you either here on the next live chat next week, or I will see you on Twitter/X probably very soon. Have a great one, guys. Bye. Bye, 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 bye.